Welcome. Welcome. This is our Sunday gathering. Nice to see you all. And welcome to Regina Dekker, our guest speaker today. For those of you that read our magazine, Regina wrote a beautiful article in our magazine that I hope that you've all read. That she'll share with us a little bit of her background today and where she comes from and what inspired her to take her spiritual journey. My topic today, first of all, thank you to Seth Pincus and to Jason Day. We need to get you and Gabe together and get you on a CD. This is Jason is a classical pianist and has done a lot of his own work, and it's just beautiful to hear the two of you meld together. It's fun, isn't it?
There's no rehearsal there. We just make it as we go.
No, that's organic music is the best music. And thank you, Seth, for all the setup that you do and supporting us in the way that you do and the beautiful sounds. I think we've all gotten accustomed to having Seth here on Sundays, so it's nice. What comes out of your mouth is extraordinary. So as I mentioned, our daughter graduated from San Diego State yesterday. She was on the 5-year plan. She was actually scheduled to graduate last year, but being young and not knowing what she wanted to do initially, so she changed majors a couple of times, but she did manage to graduate yesterday, so it was a proud day for all of us. And, as we gathered, it was interesting because there's Ardavan and I and my former husband, her father, and his current wife, and how nice it is to all gather together and have that be so friendly and supportive, and how nice it is for the children to see their parents being friends. Relationships that are sometimes awkward can become very easy. And the way that happens is through authentic communication. And that's not just meaning being truthful and saying what's on your mind, because anybody can just repeat verbally what's in their head. That isn't truth. Real truth is universal truth, where we take our emotions, inventory how we feel, and really ask for the truth of what's behind it. Robin Duncan is teaching a class here this weekend, Advancement in Spirituality, and she's a prolific teacher of the Course in Miracles. And one of the first lessons the Course in Miracles says is, you're never angry for the reason that you think you are. And so we always have to go back and look at what's really behind what I'm feeling here. And we are always having such vulnerability to be in this wonderful place called denial that allows us not to face the truths that are truly inside of us. And we aren't just being in denial because it's a great place to be, but because there's fear attached to looking what's truly inside. We're raised in a culture where there's shame and there's guilt, and we don't often have the tools given to us by our parents, grandparents, and teachers to know it's okay to just simply say, I was scared, and so I didn't say what was really on my mind. Or I was afraid that I would be left out, so I said this. None of us are bad people. Sometimes we just simply behave in ways because we're afraid, for whatever reason, of being ostracized or ridiculed, or in some manner, somebody demonstrating to us a deep inner fear that we're imperfect. When we embrace how perfect we are humans, and we have emotions. And that's a glorious thing when we embrace them for what they are and not try and cover them or deny them or replace them with something else that somebody told us somewhere in some commercial or some television program, in some book, that it was more appropriate to feel this way than that. Oh no, I'm not angry. No, I'm not really mad. No, I wasn't really upset. No, I'm not sad. It is actually okay to just say, this is how I'm feeling. And then we can begin to understand why we feel that way. And the truth is never as bad as what we imagine it to be. It's the fear of the truth that keeps us from going there. And so when we are able to get to a place of authentic communication, that's when we can say something, and we can say it with love. Love for ourselves. When we can really talk about what's bothering us with a loving feeling towards ourselves, then we're not angry or upset at the other person for making us feel that way, because we know really it never is the other person that makes us feel that way. It only ever truly comes from inside. I had a conversation with a family member 2 weeks ago, and I was talking about stress levels and how I was becoming so consciously aware of the stress I was creating in my life. And as many of you know, I've talked about, the weight that I carry on my body and how I've been looking at where that's coming from. And yes, we can all do well, you've got to exercise more and eat less, but when you're completely stressed, you tend to, well, for me anyway, eat more, and then you're exhausted, so the last thing you want to do is exercise. And I'm beginning to recognize, as I reduce my stress levels, all the food cravings are going away, and I have the energy to exercise. Who thought? Who would have known? But as I was talking to my family member, and I was saying, there's stress levels, and not everybody deals with stress the way I do. Some people actually don't eat when they're stressed. I have no idea what that feels like. I hear people say, I forgot to eat. How can you forget to eat? How is that possible? But for some people, when they're stressed, that's what happens to them. Or they drink, or they smoke. I mean, we all deal with stress in our own ways. For me, it's a drive-through somewhere. But as I was talking to her, and I said, there's these stress levels, and she said, well, it comes from my thyroid. And I said, well, in my world, when we have thyroid issues, this is right around the throat chakra. And that means we're not speaking our inner truths. If our thyroid, hers is underactive. So she was holding on and not talking. And I said, you need to speak and say what's on your mind. And she said, if I do, I'll hurt everybody's feelings. And I said, well, that's not true. You can speak from your heart and say what's on your mind and share the things that you need to without being afraid of hurting somebody else if the communication is really authentic. And she looked at me kind of incredulously, not really understanding where I was coming from, because that wasn't something ever that she had embraced, knowing how to do authentic communication. We're getting ready to publish our next magazine for July, and we're gathering all of the content. And I received an article, a submission from a colleague of mine up in Northern California who has spent years healing from ritualized sexual abuse from within her family and from without. And she wrote this article, and when I read it the other day, I was actually a little squeamish when I read it, and I just thought, this is too in your face about the amount of people that actually suffer abuse. And it wasn't the kind of kumbaya kind of feeling we tend to put in some of our articles in our magazines. And I almost was thinking, I can't publish this. And then as I got to the end of it, I went, no, this is really important. There's so many of us that really have suffered from abuse because of our own inability to speak and say what's acceptable and what's not, and our own self-worth. And it isn't the abuser who is the only player when that happens, but it is ourselves that tolerate it. And as she wrote this article towards the end, I thought, this is really bold, and it's confrontational, but in a healthy way. And so I emailed her and I said I would be proud to print your article in our upcoming magazine. And it's called Moving Beyond Healing by Judy Dragon. And she's this little itty-bitty woman, about 4'11", and 90 pounds soaking wet. And when she tells the story in her book about what she's gone through and how she has bounced back, but she had to get really authentic with herself, and she had to go in and really look at the truths that were inside, because as long as she continued to deny their existence, she couldn't become powerful. They disempowered her. And so when we really get authentic about who we are and what we are, and that deep place inside of us, there's no reason for shame. There's no reason for guilt. We didn't do anything wrong. We're beautiful human beings having a human experience with emotions. When we embrace that beauty of what we are and who we are, there is nothing that we have done wrong. And as I've been going through this past 10 days, since some of these events have occurred, I've actually heard myself saying, I need to have an authentic conversation with you. And using that word as I begin the conversation has allowed me to say things that I never thought I would say, but in a completely loving way, in a non-judgmental way. This is how I feel. And I'm not saying it's anyone's fault, it's not your fault, it's not my fault. This is just how I feel about it. And it was the most real way of dealing with something. And it was really been called on me, because when I recognize that when I don't say that, then I have all of these things in my life that I can't do anything about. And the tool is, the thing that sets me free is authentic communication. And many of you know that we're so excited moving to our new building, September 1st. One of the things I had to do was to hire an architect to go in, and you wouldn't believe the vertical learning curve I've been on if any of you read my Facebook. But I have to hire an architect to go in and look at it to make sure that, since it's being converted from a warehouse to an assembly room, that it meets all the city's requirements for safety. And it has to have, I'm learning all these things, a 1-inch thick drywall with a metal sheet in it from floor to ceiling all around it to make it a fire barrier and breakout doors. And so I have to have an architect come in who is familiar with assembly room permits and will look at the drawings and tell me what the contractor needs to do. So I hired this architect, somebody that we know from the community here. And he came in and said, oh, you need this and you need this, and drew this picture of something that was, he said, and I said, my goodness, how much is all this going to cost? And he said, oh, you're looking at $50,000, $60,000. And I said, that's just not possible. And I said, that just isn't on the plane for us to come up with that kind of money to create this move. And I was devastated. And I thought the project was off the table. I thought we were done, that's it. We're going to have to go to another little business strip mall somewhere. I had no idea. And he was saying, you have to have this and this and this. And my energy level was shrinking down with all of this. And he said, I'm not trying to be pessimistic. I just, and I got off the phone and I called the broker and I said, I've just had the worst conversation of my life. And my energy was just devastated and depleted. And she said, go to the city of Irvine and find out what you really need to do. Hung up the phone, grabbed my purse, got my keys, drove over to City Hall, stood in line, and I heard my angel saying, trust. And I'm like, okay, this is really, that was really bad news, but I kept hearing trust. So I went over there and I got in line and I went up to the permit desk and told them what we wanted to do. And I spoke with a lovely Asian gentleman named Kyle, who was the head of the civil engineering of the fire code safety. And he said, he said last week, he said, I actually wrote a list of everything somebody needs. And he took my floor plans with me, and he went over step by step everything I needed, and recognized that most of the stuff on there I either didn't need because we were below a certain assembly level, or we had it, and so we only needed a few things. And this was really even funny. We don't even have to have an air conditioner in that room because it faces north and it's all stone and it stays cool. And the architect was saying I had to spend $15,000 putting in an air conditioner, and it had to be craned to the top, and then structural analysis, and my head was swimming. And I said, what about ventilation? And he said, well, as long as you have 4% ventilation. And where they come up with these numbers, I don't know. So he said, your assembly room is 2,000 square feet. If you've got 80 square feet of ventilation, I said, well, I have a warehouse door. It's 120 square feet. And he said, that would do it. You're in code. Yes. And all of a sudden, it went from here to here what the requirements were. And the contractor that I hired is somebody I've been working with for several months now, and he's going to do all the contracting work for us labor-free and just charge material. And all of a sudden now we're looking at what was $50,000 to $60,000. I'm now looking at $3,000, maybe $4,000. I'm like, that was a big leap of trust. But I had to go back and have a conversation with this architect. And I called him and I said, I need to have an authentic conversation with you. And I said, you scared me. I said, you absolutely devastated me. And he said, well, I believe in creating, the worst case scenario first and stirring up all kinds of trouble. That way when things turn out better at the end, it's a little bit better. And I'm like, that's a terrible thing to do. So why would you do that? And he said, I just like to make things worse at first, because then when it all comes out better, you feel better. And I said, I can't work like that. And I said, we can't work together. And I said, I have to set an intention that everything is going to go beautifully and easily. And I set that vision and I create that. And then all the energies move into that beautiful, easy, graceful vision. I said, can you work with me like that? Would that be a journey you're willing to take? And he said, no. He said, I've just seen how things go wrong in the past. And I said, but we can't let our past create our future. And he said, I get that. And he said, I get that we don't want our past. And he actually said barfing on our future, which is, I've never actually heard it put that way, but that is actually rather an authentic way of talking about letting our past define our future, is letting past experiences barf on the future. I'm not sure I'm going to adopt that phraseology. I'm just going to share with you that's how he said it. And I said, I can't work that way. And I said, really? And I said, I care about you. I want your success. I appreciate all of your knowledge, but I said, I would not be able to work with somebody in a professional relationship like that. And he said, I understand. I said, good luck. And I said, we'll see you over there, and you're still part of the community, and we still love you and want to be a part of you. And I said, I'm just glad we had a conversation in this way about how each of us works. And we recognize that we can't work together in that way. It doesn't mean either one of them is wrong, but it was a really authentic communication that maintained our relationship. It was very honest, but I would have felt compelled to let him run the show that way, but I trusted. And we found another architect the next day, who has a different way of looking at things. But that was huge. But if I hadn't been able to preface it, and by putting that word at the beginning of our conversation, it allowed me to express everything I was feeling without making him wrong, without making me wrong, without making anything else wrong. And then everything is easy. What would our world look like if we all had authentic communications? As you know, I reference the philosopher Immanuel Kant, his categorical imperative. Everything that we do, imagine what our world would look like if everyone did the same thing. So when you drop a piece of trash on the floor, what would our world look like if everybody else did the same thing? And if you engage in authentic communications with the people around you, what would our world look like if everybody engaged in authentic communication? Really talking about how we feel without any kind of fear, and just gathering the strength from the solar plexus, which is where we have self-worth and self-respect, and then allowing that energy to come through our heart and put love on it, and then come out of our throat, so that by the time it gets to our throat, it's got self-respect and love embraced all around it, and then it comes out. Setting that intention, close your eyes for a minute, put your hand on your heart. Embracing having universal truth coming in and showing you what that would look like and what that would feel like to always be engaging in authentic communication. feeling the energy of your solar plexus chakra, seeing beautiful yellow light coming from this energy as it travels up into your heart chakra, putting beautiful emerald green light all around it, having it travel up to your throat chakra, putting now blue all over it. And yellow and blue, of course, make green, don't they? So those colors are all related. Seeing it now traveling out of your mouth like a beautiful song of music as we simply share how we feel with love and truth. Intertwined and, of course, always together. Love and truth go together. And I want you now to realize you have this power to always speak in this manner. You can communicate what's in the depths of your soul without any other feeling aside from love. So it is. Our new location is just on the other side of Lake Forest. So for those of you that, if you're traveling on the freeway, if you get off at Lake Forest, we're on this side, you just go on that side. It is in the Irvine Spectrum, the very, very southwest corner. It's in the last block, so that this side of Lake Forest is Irvine and this side is Laguna Hills. And the address is 11 Portal to Essential, Goddard, meaning Divine Bravery. So the address of our new location is Divine Bravery, moving into a Portal to Ascension. Can you imagine a better address? It's a 2-story white building. This location is just under 2,300 square feet. The new location is just under 7,300 square feet. We're getting 5,000 square feet more. The sanctuary is about twice as big as this room. There's going to be a yoga and a dance room upstairs, and offices, healing rooms, a gift shop, classrooms, and it backs on to what was once lined Country Safari. So to the back of our window is now all these beautiful green trees and a ravine. And the yoga room upstairs, which will be the ecstatic dance room and modern dance, and because it'll have a laminate floor, wood or laminate, we're not sure. Looks out over the mountains in the front pointing towards Laguna Beach. And Lake Forest is actually going to continue through to Highway 133, so the people that live in Newport and Laguna, they can now just come up the canyon and get into Lake Forest, and those that live on the west side of Irvine have much easier access to us. It's a perfect location. And for those of you that didn't hear the story, I'll kind of review it briefly, but we were looking for the place, and I was told it was going to be very expensive. And I asked Spirit to show me how it was that we were going to afford this new place. And I was shown this, that we're going to go out to the community and ask for sponsors of all the people in our community and in other communities. We're going to go out and ask people to tithe $20 a month. And if we can get enough people doing that, which we will, it will close the gap on the rent and the expenses. And once I was shown that, then the broker called 2 days later, gave us the location. The angels drove her to it. She couldn't find anything on the MLS listing, and so she got in the car and she was guided angelically, and she was literally told, turn left here, turn right here. When she missed it, they had her loop back around until she drove up underneath it. Every single obstacle that we've had has simply, when we arrived at it, turned around. And when I first started learning, I was going to have to get all these conditional use permits and all of these things. I just went to my angels and I said, this seems overwhelming. And they said, yes, you have a lot of hoops to jump through, and you have a lot of course navigation to do, but trust that every time you get there, the lights will be green. And that's exactly what it's felt like. It's almost like as you go along in the street, you see the light ahead of you is red. You know that feeling of like as soon as you get close to it, you're about to brake and it turns green, you go, yes, and you get to put on the accelerator. That's just me, right? No, we all know that. We all know that feeling, right? That's what it's been like. coming over here doing this building is every time it looks like there's an obstacle, and I just trust and say, whatever this is, it will resolve, and by the time it actually comes up to it, something happens and it resolves. And I just trusted. When I heard her say that the angels guided her to that building, I knew that nothing would stop us from getting there, that everything we needed to get resolved would be in there. And I held that vision. And every time it looked like it was getting a little bit overwhelming or bleak or troublesome, I just kept seeing the building and all of us in there, and the classes and what the gift shop would look like, and all the people coming in, and this having this beautiful, unified, wonderful, substantial building, because so many of our communities, we're in strip malls and people's homes, and we don't really have this beautiful, dignified building to go to. And so now we do. And we're uniting our conscious community of all the different places. And I'm just so proud. And it's just so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. It's a big... I had to do a lot of belief work to remove the negative ideas in my head that told me it wouldn't happen, it couldn't happen, it was going to be too hard, and people wouldn't show up to help me, and there wouldn't be enough money, and there wouldn't be enough support, and I had to clear all of those out. And that is for anybody who says, how do I manifest? The secret to manifestation is not what you do, it's what you stop doing. And it's the negative thoughts. As soon as you stop all the negative thoughts, then all of a sudden, everything that you want just starts happening and getting created. So anyway, I would like to, at this time, turn the mic over to Regina and share with our guest speaker. Hello.